right, welcome into another edition here of the DAV Podcast, episode number 16, When Disaster Strikes. I'm Dan Klaskins, back here with you and getting you caught up on everything that's going on around DAV. And once again, along with me, my co-host, Ashley Burns. And today we are going to take a deep dive into DAV's disaster relief program, one of many great ways we help veterans. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome in. We love to have you. Our loyal subscribers, we like you as well. And you can keep up with it everywhere you listen, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast. You got it at Spotify and dav.org/podcast, where you can find it anytime. And Ashley, always good to catch up with you, and always good to talk about the various ways DAV can help our veterans. And I'll tell you, disaster relief is an interesting one because there's a lot of it that goes on, and we're there on the ground. That grassroots element that we have with it makes DAV really beneficial to the veterans in these communities.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where you really see the impact, the one-on-one personal impact that DAV has on veterans and their families. DAV's disaster relief program is one of those things that hopefully you never need, but it's there when you do. And I've been on the ground in those situations in the wake of tornadoes or massive flooding, where DAV is there actively reaching out, going into the community and searching for veterans that are, living in shelters, and going out into the neighborhoods where, that have been impacted, going kind of door to door, looking for people who have been impacted that are veterans. But, when you've been impacted by a natural disaster, the first thing you're thinking about is not necessarily where you're going to find these resources. You're focused on how to survive hour to hour and how to get yourself and your family through it. So I would love for one of the goals today to kind of be about letting people know that DAV exists as a resource in disaster response situations. So should that day ever come, and hopefully it doesn't, that veterans know that help is available to them through our organization. So here to talk about that is Matt Saintsing with Scott Trimarchi, who is one of DAV's Assistant National Service Directors who helps to facilitate DAV's disaster relief program.
Hello, and I'm with Scott Trimarchi, Assistant National Service Director at DAV's Washington, D.C.'s National Service and Legislative Headquarters. And Scott oversees the Disaster Relief Program. And we're going to talk a little bit about the disaster relief efforts that were going on in the wake of the Texas snowstorms recently. But Scott, before we get into that, can you briefly describe what DAV's Disaster Relief Program is and how it works?
Good morning, Matt, and thank you for having me. Absolutely. DAV's Disaster Relief Program supports veterans, active duty service members, surviving spouses, and their families during times of great need in the aftermath of isolated or large-scale disasters. Providing disaster relief in times of great need is held as an important priority to DAV. Those impacted by disasters are often faced with overwhelming loss, and it remains vital to DAV that we remain steadfast in fulfilling our promises to the men and women who serve. For isolated events, DAV service officers are contacted by those affected. If the eligibility criteria are met and the service officer completes the appropriate application and sends it to our DAV headquarters, where it is reviewed for final approval. Once approved, a draft in the appropriate amount is then sent out to the recipient. For large-scale disasters, National Service Office supervisors will submit a request for approval of disaster relief drafts to be sent to their office so they can have them on hand for faster distribution to those who contact them and meet, again, the eligibility criteria. To inquire about disaster relief, simply contact the DAV service officer online by sending an email at any time to the office in the state where you currently are residing, utilizing DAV's NSO locator function on our website, dav.org. Just click on the tab marked Veterans, then find your local office. Type your zip code on the map, click search. The contact information for your local office will appear, to include a send email link. You may also speak with the DAV service officer Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time by calling 1-888-604-0234.
What kind of situation is eligible for the disaster relief grants, as you say? Wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, any kind of natural disasters?
Yeah, any kind of natural disasters. Those are good examples. The wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, house fires, flooding from storms, earthquakes are another good example as well.
How much money was given for disaster relief last year?
For last year in 2020, DAV provided $901,000, bringing our total since 1968, which is when DAV's disaster relief program actually began, to nearly $16 million dispersed to victims of disasters. And since January 1st of this year, DAV has dispersed nearly $233,000.
So what is the eligibility to receive disaster relief from DAV?
To be eligible for DAV disaster relief for an isolated or large-scale disaster, which I have to note is limited to one per family per disaster, the applicant must be an ill, injured, or wounded veteran or spouse thereof, or an active duty service member, or a surviving spouse in receipt of DIC, which is death and indemnity compensation, or a surviving spouse of a former prisoner of war, or a surviving spouse of an ill, injured, or wounded veteran whose life unfortunately was lost during that disaster. The applicant does not need to be a DAV member or in receipt of VA service-connected compensation to be eligible. And the applicant must be in immediate need of financial assistance at the time of the disaster, as they do not have available funds to pay for required expenses. And that's what we're there for.
So you don't need to be a veteran to get disaster relief, but again, you are more than welcome if you so choose. Let's talk about Texas now. Texas faced record low temperatures this past February and in mid-February, single digits in some cases. Snow and ice made roads impassable, and actually the state's electric grid lost power, and millions were left without electricity, including heat. There were rolling blackouts. There have been dozens of deaths associated with this disaster. How many veterans have sought help from DAV in the wake of this crazy storm?
A very unfortunate event that took place in Texas since the storms hit, with the unprecedented effects on February 11th, and with President Biden declaring a major disaster in Texas on February 19th. DAV has dispersed 377 drafts totaling nearly $229,000.
Have they mentioned anything of what living with the storm was like?
We've seen a few homes suffering flooding as a result of frozen water pipes. And sometimes they haven't noticed it for a couple of days after, the waters will recede into the house and doing its damage. What we've seen a lot of food lost due to the extensive power outages that they've had. Those are primarily the things that we've seen and heard. But of course, other things that could occur during very cold temperatures is tree limbs falling onto homes, or even fires occurring as a result of using some sort of electrical element to heat the home.
The purpose of DAV's disaster relief program is intended to provide immediate relief, as I understand it. It is not really supposed to be this enduring assistance, and oftentimes DAV's disaster relief program disperses money even before FEMA arrives. Do I have that right?
That is correct, Matt. The amounts we provide are intended to help with immediate relief for food, clothing, or temporary lodging. It's not intended for extended assistance. The monies that we can provide can only go so far for any particular individual. We want to make sure they have at least a couple of days of comfort. Maybe it's just food, or again, lodging if they were have to be out of their home for whatever reason.
And like all of our service programs, DAV relies on the generous charity of our donors. We receive no government funding to fund these critical programs, including disaster relief. So if anyone out there would like to donate to DAV, please, we encourage you to go to dav.org/donate. Scott, I appreciate you being with me here today, and I'll give you the last word.
Well, thank you, Matt. I certainly appreciate being given this opportunity to discuss DAV's disaster relief program. If I could take a moment to add to all veterans, active duty service members, family members, or surviving spouses listening today, if you are in need of assistance with VA claims or information about your veterans benefits, please visit benefitsquestions.org or call 1-888-604-0234, Monday through Friday, again, 9 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, to get in touch with a DAV benefits counselor. Our services are free of charge, and I would like to stress you neither have to donate to DAV nor be a DAV member for us to assist you. I know we were talking about disaster relief, but you'd be surprised, Matt, how many individuals, when they're speaking with our service officers regarding disaster relief, also discuss their VA benefits and see if there's any potential benefits that they can obtain.
Just because you have an immediate problem with a disaster doesn't mean that DAV won't be able to help you with your claim or wouldn't be able to see what can be done about your other veterans benefits. So I think it's, disaster relief might get your foot in the door, either physically or virtually nowadays. But, you're more than welcome to check out and please ask our NSOs about the wonderful service we provide, including claim service to any veteran out there.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you, Matt. I truly appreciate your time.
Oh, no worries, Scott. I really appreciate you being here with me today. Have a great day.
You too now. Take care.
All right, so good stuff hearing from that and about DAV's disaster relief program. And DAV continues to help veterans in many ways, as we talked about. During 2020, DAV donated over 900,000 and roughly 350 comfort and hygiene supply kits to more than 1,200 veterans and giving them those bare basics that they needed. And one of the biggest disasters we've seen this year is what happened earlier down in Texas. And as Texas faced record low temperatures this past February, we definitely saw a lot of things pop up down there. Snow and ice, they made roads impassable. The state's electric grid operator literally lost control. Power supply, it went out, leaving millions without access to electricity. And as blackouts extended from hours to days, many Texans left in dire straits. And like so many times before, DAV was on the ground to help veterans in need through our disaster relief program. And our own Matt St. Sing, he sat down with DAV National Service Officer Ryan Burgo to hear firsthand how things went for him down in Waco, Texas, one of the areas hit hardest by the storms.
I'm here with Ryan Burgos, who supervises the DAV office in Waco, Texas. And Ryan, I understand your office was responsible for a lot of the disaster relief efforts down there. How much money does the Waco, Texas help distribute?
I mean, we did quite a bit of distribution down here. We were on the ground during the disaster and issued about just over 300 vouchers to veterans and their families, with the amounts totaling over $183,000. So we've definitely impacted several veterans and their families throughout the entire disaster.
Can you describe just what it was like to live through this winter storm? Did you yourself lose power?
For sure, yeah. We did. Our house did lose power for about 4 days, just over 4 days. We were kind of on the fortunate side, though, because there's areas in Austin and Killeen where they were without power for upwards of a week. And some of those places even lost water for about a week as well. So we were a little bit fortunate, but, in my mind, I thought by that fourth day, man, I thought our life was over, and sitting in my living room couch, if you can see your breath in the living room, it's pretty rough.
That is not the image I get when I think of Texas.
Exactly. And we thankfully, we had 2x4s that were burning in our fireplace because we couldn't find firewood anywhere. And trying to get 2x4s lit, and it's 5 degrees outside and below 20 in my home, it was pretty rough.
How did the weather and power outages and all this impact your work as an NSO in general and for disaster relief? Were you running on generators?
I know for the Waco regional office and the Houston and San Antonio office was actually still closed right now because they had a pipe burst in the regional office.
Oh, wow.
But the offices were basically closed for approximately 4 days because the regional office was closed. They had no power, no way to get into the office. And then even when power came back on, the roads were still too icy for individuals to be driving on. Us as an NSO, if we had no power, we couldn't get connected into the internet so we can help our clients. So thankfully, other offices around the country were able to adjust and still filter some of our calls, some of our emails, and still assist those veterans in need. When COVID happened last year, it showed us that we didn't need to actually have a veteran in our office to assist them. We're actually able to assist them remotely, electronically, via video, phone, emails, just as good as we would be able to as if they were in our office. So we use those same capabilities when our office were closed down, and offices all over the country were able to reach into our queues and assist us, reach out to our veterans who were in need, get things to the VA timely as they needed them to do, and talk to our veterans who needed advice, So it wasn't, while we were down and out for a little while, it didn't mean that our mission stopped.
And since you brought up COVID-19, how has the pandemic, did that impact disaster relief efforts at all in Texas?
So, it has, but we've been going through the pandemic for a little while now. So we've learned different ways to get around it. While veterans don't really come into the office as much, we've got other avenues for them to reach us. For example, we have multiple Board of Veteran Appeals hearings on a daily basis. So working in conjunction with the board, we were able to secure virtual hearings for veterans, where veterans are now able to do those hearings from their phones, from their computers or laptops. And it's as if they were there. They're using their webcams, they see us, we see them, and we speak to the judges and advocate for them. And, just another way that the mission doesn't stop just because the pandemic or just because the snowstorms are there. Our assistance goes way beyond that. We do our best to always be there.
I'm wondering if you can give me some color, some specifics on what people went through in Texas.
The majority of people that we've helped, we've noticed that, anytime your power goes out for an extended period of time, food in your fridge tends to spoil. And with people that had no water and things, people forced to go into hotels. The majority of people that we've seen have their power out, food has spoiled, and now they're faced with trying to replace that food. So because of the disaster relief that we've been doing, now they're able to replace that food. Now they're able to stay in a hotel where they can get warm, take a hot shower, sleep in a warm bed for a few days. And if it wasn't for this type of program, these veterans would be stuck cold in their homes. They could be stuck without food on their table. We had one veteran that had contacted our office that had a newborn baby that was 3 months old, stuck in her home, had no power, and said that she needed help so she can get the baby out, that she couldn't warm milk up in her house anymore. So because of the vouchers that we were able to issue them, she was able to stay in a hotel, warm the baby's food, and make sure her family was taken care of. The biggest thing, though, the impact that we've had on the veterans here was just being able to put food on the table to provide.
That is equally touching and heartbreaking. Parents of newborn not able to care for their 3-month-old child. And I think that kind of speaks to just how serious this ice storm was. I think when news coverage started popping up about this, I think a lot of people were like, oh, ice storms in Texas, how bad can it really be? And then you start learning of it being 20 degrees in people's homes and they don't have food and they're trying to set random things on fire just for warmth. I think that kind of just puts the whole disaster into perspective.
I'm sure people have seen on the news by now that Texans were faced with, not just Texans, but veteran Texans that were faced with extremely high electric bills and things. So one thing that our office here has been doing is if we're speaking to veterans that are like that, is informing them about the partnership between DAV and Pentagon Federal Credit Union, that they have the ability on a grant program help pay one of the veterans' bills for them, who if it's a bill that they can't pay and are in need of emergency financial assistance, if they're a service-connected veteran or they have a claim that's currently pending and have an honorable discharge, we can submit that bill to Pentagon Federal Credit Union. And after it's reviewed, they can basically pay that bill for them.
I wrote a story a little bit ago about a veteran out in the Sacramento area of California, of how he was at risk of being homeless, and a national service officer out there was able to link him up with the PenFed Foundation, as you say, to get bills paid. And he kept the roof over his head. The
reason why I like that program so much when they use us is because it touches veterans of all eras, not just post 9/11 veterans. They don't have to be a member of our organization. You need to be an honorably discharged veteran, service-connected honorably discharged veteran, and to reach out to us. Everybody needs a helping hand sometime.
So we're talking about all the stressors caused by this winter storm. And I can only imagine that kind of exacerbates or it can kind of impact veterans' service-connected disabilities. Was there any instances of that happening where this crisis kind of just made their disabilities or injuries worse?
For sure. So you take like a veteran who has PTSD or anxiety and depression issues, and we spoke earlier about being a father or being a mother and trying to provide for your family. And when you have that ability taken away from you, it definitely exacerbates it. Veterans' anxiety can go through the roof. They can panic because they can't provide, or they can't get their home warmed properly. Or take a veteran who has service-connected cold weather injuries. I'm sorry. They moved to Texas because it generally doesn't get that cold.
Yeah.
It doesn't get where it was below 20. And one of the days, when I looked at my phone, it said it was 5 degrees outside. So these veterans that suffer from these cold weather injuries that moved here to get away from it, they find themselves unable to get out of bed sometimes in that cold weather because their joints are hurting, their muscles are hurting, they just can't really move, they're in pain. So yes, it affected everybody, the storms did, but in specific the disabled veterans, because their disabilities prevent them from doing things that the average person could.
So what does the relief look like? Help me understand the full range of what DAV can offer.
We initially first started, we did order our vouchers to issue to veterans, like you said, for the cash payments. But we also ordered supply kits. So the supply kits have a backpack. They have a hygiene kit, which contains like a toothbrush, a razor, toothpaste, shave cream, shampoos. But it also has a blanket, and with the cold weather, the blanket is what's really needed. It was really cold out there, so the blankets helped out a lot for our veterans that had no power.
Can you walk me through the process of a veteran is in Texas, they lost power, they're realizing just to the extent of what's going on. Walk me through the process of from veteran understanding that to actually getting help from DAV.
It's actually a simple process. The hardest thing is informing everybody, because just because you're a vet doesn't mean you automatically know about DAV and what we do. So as long as the veteran knows who we are, or can go to benefitsquestions.org and locate their nearest office, all they would need to do is contact us. Once we receive that contact, we'll pick up the phone, we call them, we talk to them on the phone for a little while, figure out the extent of their need. And basically the same day that we speak to them is the same day that we place the voucher in the mail to them. Every day we mail out between 30 to 60 vouchers a day, every single day since everything has started. And
wow,
if mail has already been picked up here, I drop it off in the mailbox when I'm on my way out the door also. We just want to make sure we get them the check as quickly as possible. But typically, they'll get the check in about 2 to 3 business days, maybe.
How much are these vouchers worth? Are they all for the same amount?
It's a different amount. It depends on the actual need. If the veteran had a loss of food or clothing, you can't put food on the table, the voucher is going to be for $500. Now, if it's they do need to stay in a hotel, or they have the inability to pay for a hotel, the amount does go up to $1,000. So it does vary. It's not just a set amount for everything. That's why our NSOs or service officers speak to them. We got to figure out what is the actual need, and is it just something that we want to ensure that it's for an immediate need, an immediate need meaning that the veteran doesn't have the funds to necessarily pay for it right now. So that way DAV can provide for them.
What did veterans do with this financial assistance? We talked about buying food, staying in a hotel. Were there any other things that jumped off the page for you?
The biggest thing was the food. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck nowadays. Not everybody is as fortunate to be able to save money for the just in case days. And then especially because of the pandemic now that people really don't have that nest egg in the bank just for the just in case. You think that, okay, well, it's just snow, it's just some bad weather, some ice. It's okay, I'll just stay inside. Well, then the power goes out, and now you're faced with, okay, well, it'll just be a couple hours, it'll come back on. And then you wake up the next day and it's still off. A couple more days go by, it's still off, and your food starts to spoil. And you say, well, not only do I not have a job right now because I'm unemployed because of COVID, but now I've got to replace food that my unemployment can't pay for. So what am I going to do? The majority of veterans that we've spoken to are just extremely happy that they're given the ability to do this type of thing. We're empowering them to be able to go back to the store and purchase things that was already difficult for them to purchase, and now they have to purchase it because they didn't have power.
What were the reactions of the veterans or families that are receiving this transformative help?
Everybody was extremely happy. We've had veterans in tears saying thank you. We've had individuals calling on a daily basis, hey, can you guys reach out to my friend that who's also in need, he didn't realize that you guys were there. Can you call him? He's too ashamed to call, or she's too ashamed to call. We reach out to him, and just an overwhelming amount of gratitude from everybody that we've come in contact with.
Were there any instances of veterans who were asking for financial help with this disaster relief program, but they ended up receiving claims assistance?
I mean, the word gets around that we are doing disaster relief, and so veterans end up contacting our office and just say, hey, my friend had told me to call here. I'm not really too sure what it is that you guys are doing. So we get to explain, what the disaster relief effort that we're completing. But then we get into, well, this is what DAV is all about. Say, I've never filed a claim, or I gave up on that a long time ago. So one of our service officers will end up speaking to them. We'll end up taking representation on them, reviewing their case. We filed several claims from individuals that we first discovered who DAV was. And people just tell us, oh, well, I didn't realize that's what you guys did. I thought that since you guys were in the VA building, that you guys were the VA. And it's like, no, we're here for you. We're your advocate. Let us help you.
What advice would you give to any veteran out there that may be facing disaster?
The first step is reaching out. There's nothing wrong with asking for a helping hand. Like I said earlier, everybody at one point in time needs some assistance. And just visit benefitsquestions.org if you don't know how to reach us. If you know of a veteran if you're a family member of a veteran or you know a veteran, encourage them to reach out to us. You can even, as a regular civilian, can reach out to us and say, hey, my friend is a veteran. This is how you can get in contact with him. Can you please help him? Can you please reach out to him? Our office doesn't have a problem reaching out to him. We do that on a daily basis where we get contacts from other individuals saying, hey, my uncle needs help, or hey, my next door neighbor needs help. He doesn't know how to reach you guys. So we'll take the information, we'll reach out to them, and we'll help. But for the individuals that are not veterans themselves, honestly, the biggest thing that they can do is talk to them and listen to them. Being a veteran myself, I know what it's like to suffer from disabilities, and that disabilities from my service. So sometimes all the veteran really needs is a listening ear to show that they care about them. Here at DAV, we're veterans helping veterans. We know what it's like to be in service, what the process is like coming out of service, and then having to suffer from disabilities years after our service. We know what it's like. Let us be there for you.
Absolutely. You're talking to veterans out there. You're talking to like-minded individuals and people who have similar experience. And I would say that a help up isn't necessarily a handout, and it is not a sign of weakness to ask for help if you really need it. Again, Ryan Burgos, the supervisor of the DAV office in Waco, Texas. Really appreciate your time today. And again, thank you for being with me.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Man, they really did get hit hard down in Texas. It was nice to know that DAV was there to help, and always good, Ashley, hearing from the ground, the guys on the ground, the gals on the ground, our national service officers, and helping so many. And really, since our program's inception back in 1968, nearly $16 million dispersed as a result of our relief efforts. And I know quite a bit of that's come recently, and it's great to see that all the donors that support DAV, can see their money in action. And when people are left without power, without homes, without things, even those bare basics can mean the world of difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I said, I've been on the ground with DAV disaster relief teams that have been going out and looking through shelters to try and find people who are eligible for assistance, and watching them hand the checks over and realizing that these people literally have nothing left. They've lost their entire home, and, going to the footprint where their home once stood and seeing them, cry when they get these checks. You really can feel even small amounts really make a difference. It means that their kids are going to eat. It means that they have a place to sleep for the night. So it really is a hugely impactful part of what we do.
To learn more about our disaster relief program and any of our many programs, just visit our resources page at DAV.org. While you're there, of course, you can make a donation so we can help all of our veterans. And definitely want to follow us on social media and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. As we said, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, to name a few. And Ashley, lots of good podcasts already out there on our podcast page, and a really, really good episode coming up here next in episode 17 as we turn our attention to some minority veteran issues.
So yes, we're going to be talking about the minority veteran experience and drawing a sharper focus on what can be done both within VA and within our own veteran community to improve outcomes for those who are underrepresented among us. And as you are probably aware, we're approaching the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So we'll be focusing in a future episode on the experiences of the men and women who served during that time. And some who ultimately made the decision to serve because of the events of September 11th. So looking at how the events of that day really shaped an entire generation of military members and veterans.
No doubt about it. Looking forward to that episode. Looking forward to having you return and catch us. But until next time, for Ashley Burns and all of us here at DAV, I'm Dan Claskins. Thanks for listening to another edition of the DAV Podcast.